That was Mark just trying to figure everything out. He wasn't understanding how we went, how he got sent away.
Oh, 3D politics never quite works the way you think.
Just so you know, Tom, you have two icons, yourself and the 3D politics.
Everything got messed up. Everything got messed up, man. 3D politics. Every Monday night, I'm your fine host, Tommy McKay, your verbal Viking. Let's bring on David Van, our resident expert on Oklahoma State government and advocate for mental health concerns. Where are you, David? And of course, David Oldham, the founder of constitutionalgrounds.com. I don't even know how it happened.
Yeah.
What can you guys see?
I can see the four squares.
I can't. There you guys are. Wow. Well, whatever it was, it all went wacky.
That's because we tried something fancy.
I don't know. We keep trying to improve. In fact, let me just fix this here. I'm going to copy and paste. Let me just copy and I got to copy an email here. .com and let me just paste that. Okay, now that I got that copied and pasted, we got a fat show for you tonight. 7 o'clock ish. We're going to talk about Oklahoma. Yes, sir.
That was a smooth intro.
Pretty good, huh? We'll be able to edit the hell out of that. Oklahoma Trauma-Informed Care Taskforce. This is something that just is near and dear to my heart, having had adverse childhood experiences. And so this is something we're going to rush through. 7:15, we're going to bring on Mark Thomas, who is a grassroots Canadian county guy, elector in 2012 and 2016. Also, Al Gerhart, bottom of the hour, 7:30, to talk about the sociopathic personalities in politics, which sounds a lot like stand-up comedians, if you ask me. 7:45, to the end of the show, we got 3 great stories. Oklahoma Department of Education exempts this year from school grading, and restaurants win a restraining order against the Able and Commission and Governor. And of course, Legislature ignores 2-tier justice system in Indian territories. A lot to get to, but first, I want to thank David Van and David Oldham for being here. Also, our guests that are coming up. And I want to say real quickly before we get too deep into it, coming up Tuesday night in Manford, Oklahoma, the hashtag Keep Christmas Rally advocating for our constitutional liberties. It's going to be right there at 101 Green Valley Drive, Manford, Oklahoma, 74044. It's next to the Manford Public Library. That's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Be there early to get a seat because 3D Politics is going to be there emceeing and speaking as well. So to hurry up and get into this, boys, how you been? Oh, good. So let's get into the show.
Tom,
Yeah.
gonna give away a mug tomorrow night. Come on out to Manford. You got to be part of this, and I'll have what's left of our inventory makes great stocking stuffers, especially when you need to beat someone over the head with a stocking.
Stocking stiffers. There's one for you. Yeah, and Oldham, I got your nice, you and your wife sent me a nice thank you. We had showed up to your party as a thank you, and then you said thank you to our thank you, and then I just want to say thank you for saying thank you to our thank you. Just thank you.
Well, gee, thank you.
No, thank you.
So, rushing into the big story. So now I got a lot to cover. This is dangerous territory. Did you know that Oklahoma has a trauma-informed care task force? And they created a strategy to rebuild social supports through collaboration to address adverse childhood experiences. And they call those ACEs. Because they're so into symbolism, everything is in just letters. Oklahoma's social supports have eroded over time as budgets shrink. Now, that first sentence is so full of crap, you can barely start to swallow anything else. And if you'll notice this with almost every socialistic progressive routine, all their crap is in the first sentence, because if I can, and then everything else, the numbers crunch, because if I can convince you that up is down and down is up, then all my numbers will work perfectly. I mean, it's just, and you'll fly right into the ground as you're pulling your plane up. See? Yes. So that is a bull crap statement, right? From Corey Jones, I might attribute the writer from Tulsa World, December 2nd, 2020. Corey Jones says Oklahoma's social supports have eroded over time as budgets shrink. And I think that's total crap. But a legislative task force is establishing a framework to better coordinate and revive help for children and families across the state. The Oklahoma Trauma-Informed Care Task Force on Tuesday, that would be over the last week, is its second report in 2 years, which establishes a strategy to better leverage existing resources as it works to develop pilot programs. Are you guys absolutely in the weeds yet? Okay, they're leveraging resources to develop pilot programs and overall plan in 2021. So, I mean, literally all they're doing is just like grasping at straws for money to come up with a plan. The goal is to help all children, well, look out, through public-private partnerships. But there is a special emphasis on youth who have experienced what they call adverse childhood experiences. You guys, of course, being white, didn't have any.
I would not know
you
what
didn't
an
have one. You didn't have
experience
one.
was.
You've never had
frankly,
one.
since they made up the term, I have no clue.
Hey, Tom,
This is your first.
There's nothing in this press release that has told me anything solid yet.
Well, I haven't bored the hell out of you yet. Science has found ACEs, they call them, to be strong predictors of cognitive, behavioral, and physical health and mental wellness problems. They include household dysfunction, neglect, abuse, poverty, crime, substance abuse, and mental health illness. A part of being trauma-informed is recognizing what is the result of trauma. Jennifer Hayes.
Informed. This is like being race informed or race injustice informed or something like that.
Coming along fine, Oldham. Very good.
Informed. Yeah, exactly. This is Orwellian. This is like to suggest that some people have never suffered trauma and don't know what it is. You know, especially as a child.
Is it psychopaths in politics? Maybe. I
think this is part of this. That ties in, Oldham. Way to go. Way to go. So here is a thing called CIRCA, the Center for Integrative Research on Childhood Adversity in Tulsa. Jennifer Hayes Grudo is the director of CIRCA. Okay. And Hayes Grudo said state agencies, nonprofits, and academic and healthcare institutions have put aside normal competition for government funding streams to jointly address the long-term effects of ACEs on children and families. Now, I won't bore you with 2 pages of this Corey crap, but at the bottom line of it, she says, Annette Wisk-Jacoby, the director of Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth, said a good indicator of a community's health is how its children are doing. Let me just remind her, it's not our children. They are mine.
Thank you.
And at the end of it, she says, we've got to normalize the idea that we are all part of raising all children. Isn't that cute?
Now, did they ever define what ACEs were?
Oh yeah. I just tried to rush through this because I want to get
Would you tell
comment.
us what aces
Alden,
are?
you're just not educated. That's
I know.
You're not informed. It's informed.
And let's just get on with it.
Yeah,
Educate, because I don't know
I'm
what they
telling you.
mean.
Tom,
Well,
you're not.
I rushed through it.
I'm racist as well, and I don't know what they mean by that either. Usually, because
so ACEs, that is adverse childhood experiences. I mean, mommy, I stubbed my toe.
What do they mean by that?
Yeah.
I think what they mean is household dysfunction, neglect, abuse, poverty, crime, substance abuse, and mental illness. I believe those were the household dysfunction. So the idea here also, I used to talk about the idea they used to have those shows where they leave a wallet with $400 on the sidewalk to test to see if you're honest or not. And people ask me the question, and my transparent answer was, it depends on my contextual situation at the time. Depending on my situation, I may very well stuff that money in my pocket and say, thank you, Jesus, because I needed it because of whatever I want to think. There may be other times where I'll take the money and return it immediately because of the situation. Other times I may take the money, use it, and then try to pay them back later, because no one is morally consistent all the time. People will fluctuate in their behavior. So, I mean, the idea of adverse childhood experiences, when you talk about household dysfunction, every household at one period or time has a dysfunctional moment. So it's ridiculous to consider that it's a household with dysfunction is, quote unquote, a dysfunctional household. Has anybody ever told a lie? Sure, we've all told a lie. Are you a liar? Well, I'm not a liar. Have you lied? Well, yeah. Does that make you a liar?
Yeah.
No. In an essence. So what was your adverse childhood experience, guys?
I was almost aborted. Actually, my mother went in to get an abortion because she thought she had a miscarriage. The doctor said, no, you've still show pregnancy hormones. I'm not going to do it until those come back negative. Sure enough, I was born 6 months later with 2 placentas came out. How's that for adverse?
Dang it.
Now they say I killed my twin.
Damn it.
Can't win.
Oh, you're trying to take total credit for everything. You did not kill anybody, okay?
No, I'm saying somebody accused me of it last week when it
killed.
I'm talking about adverse childhood experience. Like for me, one time a guy, he didn't like what I said on the bus, and so he grabbed me like that, and I bit his hand. It was horrible.
Yeah.
You never. Oldham's too tough. He never hit his brother.
No. I have plenty of things that I could dwell on and turn into an adverse experience, but I refuse because I understand life, and so I move on. And that if that sets me apart, makes me racist and what?
And it does
not childhood not adverse aware, okay,
but you are uninformed,
experience aware.
You are not informed. So look, the main reason I bring up the story is so that people in Oklahoma realize their money is going for stuff like this. Adverse child experience. Tell me, I got 5 kids I'm raising, and it's amazing how many times your life comes to a complete end before you're 3 years old. I mean, your life ends every day. Are you kidding me? Childhood experiences. Yeah. And they'll say 4 out of 5 children get hungry every day. And they'll go, hell, 5 out of 5, everybody gets hungry. Suffer from hunger. Every day I get hungry. 3D Politics, once again, we're getting ready to bring in Mark Thomas, Elector 2012 and 2016. I am your verbal Viking, your perspicuitous pirate, your plunderer of conversation, Tommy McKay. Find me at Tommy McKay, Facebook, Twitter, and on SoundCloud. I've got David Van, Soonerpolitics.org, and David Oldham, ConstitutionalGrounds.com. Let's get over here and bring in Mark Thomas. Oh, yeah. Appreciate you guys suffering that last story with me. That was brutal. Mark Thomas.
Take the cube out.
Seems like he's, take the cube out.
All right.
There it goes. Thank you.
There you go.
Man.
And Mark's
Slowly
there
but surely, we're gonna
somewhere.
bring them all in.
Hopefully he can hear us.
You guys got all that tech worked out. Now, from what I understand, Mark Thomas, elector, selected in 2012 and 2016 out there in Canadian County.
There he is.
Grassroots mover. There's Mark Thomas. Mark Thomas, nice to meet you for the first time over Zoom.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm your fine host. I appreciate you being on the show.
It's my pleasure, guys.
I think I said all that stuff right. They told me elector 2012, 2016. And we're going to talk a little bit about what remains with the vote, how a few cheating states have undermined the entire republic.
Yes, sir. How are my Davids tonight?
Good.
I'm doing great.
Good. Oh,
Awesome.
look at you, Mr. Ben Risenham.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the lights
It's
are down, he
Christmas.
really sparkles.
I wear this suit once a year, whether I feel like it or not.
Now that is professionalism, and that's why we
That's
got
right.
him here on 3D Politics.
Dedication.
So, Mark Thomas, Oldham brings you on for what reason to express tonight?
Well, in my conversations with David over the last few days, we were speaking, Tom, specifically about the action that Texas took that I believe 17 other states joined in on.
Okay.
And they basically were making a statement that these states, I believe there were 4, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and was it Arizona? That broke their own. Is that correct?
I think so.
Correct.
They basically broke their own laws.
Yeah.
Number one, by going outside their legislative body, the governor, the judicial branch, and Secretary of State, and in some cases, the election board officials as well.
Yep.
And Texas recognized something that's very important because under Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, it's very clear that the states or the appointment of the electors in each state is to be directed in the manner directed by the legislative body in each state. And Tom, that's very significant because you have to understand why that matters. And it matters because all the states collectively have an agreement within the Constitution. And in Article 6 of the Constitution, it states that the Constitution is, and its treaties are the law of the land. All of the states are agreeing to that Constitution. The federal government is an agent that engages in certain activities on behalf of the state. They are an agency created by contract, by agreement of the states. All of the states have agreed to abide by Article 2, Section 1. And the reason that's significant is because we have a representative republic form of government. So Article 2, Section 1 is saying the people get to speak, and the people are in control of that process through the legislative body, through the representative body. And what all 4 of these states did is they just said, we're going to deny representation to our constituents. We're going to take it upon ourselves as individuals to alter the process and not get consent from the electorate to do that. Now, if you're going to live in a society that's a free society, that functions as a free society, and you're going to find some way to muddle through this in some kind of representative way, you go back to what Jefferson said in the Declaration when he was talking about the proper role of government. The proper role of government is to secure these rights derived by the consent of the governor, the just powers, I should say, derived from the consent of the governor. Mm-hmm. That didn't exist. So in context of what happened, you had a small oligarchy, 4 or 5 people probably within that process that decided to take the decision away from the electorate. They could neither dissent or consent to that process. Now, I wanted to share, and I told David I wanted to share some thoughts with you from my experience in 2012 as elector.
Yeah, please.
Both of the Davids may be aware of this. The vast majority of people were not. But in 2012, there was an operative from the Romney campaign that basically did not want Ron Paul nominated from the floor. They didn't want anybody nominated from the floor.
Yeah.
So they went about, we'll shorten what happened and abbreviate it. But what happened is the RNC took it upon itself to change the rules. And to change the rules, what they did was they gave the Romney campaign the ability to unseat duly elected delegates to that convention and replace them with friendly Romney delegates. Now, when I got wind of that and I understood what happened, I made it publicly known that I would not cast my vote for Mitt Romney if he should win in that presidential election. I was the Republican elector from the 3rd Congressional District. And at that time, I had to tell Matt Pinnell, who was our chair of the state GOP, now Lieutenant Governor, that I would not cast a vote for Mitt Romney if he won. And I'll explain to you why. Mitt Romney had full knowledge of the fact that the RNC had changed the rules to unseat delegates. He was in effect, and by application, denying representation to people from states all around the country by removing those delegates. And I told Matt Pinnell, a man that you are going to sit in the highest seat in a representative republic to safeguard the rights of the people, that would allow that to stand and not say anything about it, was unfit for the position. And I would not cast a vote for him. Now, if you fast forward to what we see today with this election, you have the same thing that's taken place in these 4 states that were brought together in this suit. There's probably other states that did the same thing that we weren't aware of. But every one of these officials within this state took it upon themselves to deny representation to their constituent base. Now, if you look at Article 6 of the Constitution, it guarantees a republic form of government. All of our states combined have collectively come together to say, we're going to guarantee each other a Republican form of government. That means that that federal government that is our agent has an incumbent duty to act in the case that that republic is threatened or that form of government is threatened.
Absolutely.
So, if I may insert some hyperbole for entertainment value here, the idea that they would reject, the Supreme Court would reject the Texas case as presented this year. The Supreme Court is designed, in my understanding, to help to protect state against state aggression. So I
That's
mean,
correct.
in the explanation you're giving us, the Pennsylvania that I know of, that they totally decimated their constitutional state constitution in the way that they ran their election. If Oklahoma took up arms and invaded Pennsylvania because of this election, the Supreme Court would damn sure have to take it up to protect Pennsylvania from Oklahoma invading it. So there's some hyperbole for you.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate what you're saying. I really appreciate what you're saying. There's your catechism of understanding that all this stuff should be taught in the public schools. They taught me how to do whaling before the Port of Catoosa in 7th grade. So, but I was way ahead of it as an American Native American.
Tom, one of the issues we have is most people, and you're talking about education, most people out there, when we do one of these videos, you always have to know or have an understanding of what your audience is.
Yeah.
some of the audience here is going to be very well educated in the Constitution, what it is, what it's supposed to do, how it's supposed to service, and what the fail-safes and the guards are, and checks and balances.
Right.
A lot of people are not. And we've got a situation now where basically we're in a very dangerous position because we've experienced lawlessness that affects the other states.
And I define it as an arbitrary, it's not, I mean, a lawlessness through arbitrary enforcement is the functional characteristic of the lawlessness. It's not like there's no law. They enforce it when they want, and then they don't enforce it when they don't want. Eric Holder still marauds around. I mean, I don't care what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. Eric Holder is walking around in contempt of Congress. Nobody holds him accountable. So, I mean, it's totally arbitrary enforcement of law. So, and that is lawlessness.
We've got a situation now where the states recognize it. And in some of the circles that I run in now, we have seen an escalation of conversation about what's the remedy going to be. We can't let this kind of lawlessness stand without addressing it. So right now we've got a possible remedy that I think David Oldham is going to talk about that runs through the court system, or not the court system, but the Senate and the House.
Yeah.
Once that remedy runs its course, what other remedies do you have as a state? And those conversations have escalated now, and I've had some with some of the legislators within the state of Oklahoma. And people are pointing to Texas right now and North Dakota and talking about, what does secession look like? How do we do that?
I thought we learned our lesson. That is not going to happen. There's
other remedies that are being discussed as well.
I mean, here's what's, before we reset, here's what secession will look like. Hey, there's been a hazard gas leak in your neighborhood. I need you to board the bus.
But Tom, it could be also maybe Oklahoma doesn't secede, but maybe Oklahoma and about, how many other dozen states say, no, Pennsylvania, you're going to secede.
Expulsion.
I'm just saying,
the big
expulsion.
The big thing is that Mark has well laid forth. And it's Article 4 where the Republic is guaranteed. We're
going to talk
about that. Let's reset this so we can bring everybody back in. 3D Politics every Monday night right here on Facebook Live. I've got David Vann, our expert on Oklahoma State government and advocate for mental health concerns, creator, editor of Sooner Politics. Find him at SoonerPolitics.org. Also, David Oldham, founder of Constitutional Grounds, an organization teaching and promoting liberty and the restoration of constitutional governance. Find him at constitutionalgrounds.com. Tonight we've got, thankfully, Mark Thomas, grassroots Canadian county guy, elector from 2012, 2016, and of course you got me, Tommy McKay, your verbal Viking, every Monday night right here on Facebook Live. So you guys were saying, and we've got to bring we're going to bring Al Gerhart in when he shows up at 7:30. But you guys were referencing specific articles, Mark and David.
Yeah, the real thing that we have to do is start talking about this. Are we going to let this lie? Are people going to just allow this to slide and call it good? We really do have a president. I can tell you, Joe Biden will never be recognized by me as a legitimate president.
Well, that ought to fix
ever, because he's not. He's already threatened to violate his oath of office as soon as he takes it. Yeah. He's going to go after guns on day one. That is his promise.
Why is it that triggers you? But what triggers me is he said, if I have a disagreement with the girl, I will simply pretend I have a disease. I mean, that is,
well, he's not
pretends they have a disease
on day one.
Well, that's true. Okay. I see the time.
The real thing is that he's already in violation of his oath. And these people are casting votes as though he is legitimate and as though they have the right to cast a vote for him. And that's the biggest problem that we have. Now the question is, what can we do about it? In the short term, January 6th is a big day. President Trump has just tweeted, and many of us had already made plans, and I will be in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. So I probably won't be here. There will be up to 14 hours of debate in the two houses, beginning at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on January 6th, because there are 7 duplicate ballots that must be taken up, electoral ballots. It doesn't look good right now. Mark and I have been discussing at length what is the law that surrounds this whole thing. And Congressman Hearn's office was gracious enough to work hard to find me the information and get it to me so that I could do the research on it. It doesn't look really good.
Okay.
The houses have to concur to the objections.
If I could try to simplify this for people who haven't studied as much as you two fellas did. Sure. So we know that Puerto Rico, for instance, doesn't get a say in who the president is because they're a territory. They're not a state. A state means that you've joined this covenant where you say, we're going to abide by the Constitution, and so are you. So when it comes to seating the electors from the different states, is it your contention then that electors that were not properly and constitutionally selected should not be seated?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, what's your
that would be the short.
No, I concur with that 100%. But the obstacle you're going to have right now are people like Tom Cole who are ready to throw in the towel because Mitch McConnell signaled that he should.
Yes, that was correct.
And that's going to be a real issue when you've got the establishment players that just say the people have spoken. I am so sick of hearing that I could puke. I'm so sick of hearing the narrative that
my language.
Well, they didn't speak. That's part of the issue that we're talking about, where these guys went outside the legislative body to change the election laws. That's not the voice of the people. That's the voice of a handful of people you could call a small oligarchy.
Most of the people have spoken, but
Most
of the people have spoken, but some of them spoke 18, 19 times or more.
Well, and David, you know, that's part of the issue here, because when you allow your election process to be altered, that needs to be by the people. The people need to understand the risk assessment that's involved with making those alterations. They weren't consulted about it. The officials did not get their consent, and this narrative that's going around that Trump is subverting the election is absolute nonsense. The subversion already took place.
Yep.
The process was already subverted in these states, these 4 states that we know about, and probably others, where the elected officials, a handful of a few, subverted the process to get an outcome they wanted. We don't know what that outcome is, but they altered that.
Yep.
Right.
Now, for Trump to come in and say we're going to take action, or a senator or a representative from any of the several and sovereign states to say that, and come in and say we're going to right the wrong.
Gentlemen,
we're not going to listen to your nonsense.
We really should have had Mark come on quite a bit earlier and worked a longer segment instead of the 15 minutes. But I got to tell you, Mark, we got to bring you on again. We got Al Gerhart waiting. Thanks for coming on, Mark Thomas. And we'll have you on again. I appreciate you being here tonight very much. We're getting ready to bring in Al Gerhart. We're going to go over here and see which mouse I'm using. It's very, very confusing. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please, there he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Al Gerhart, co-founder of the Sooner Tea Party. Ladies and gentlemen, Oklahoma advocate and Oklahoma activist. There he is, Al Gerhart. Al, I appreciate you being here. You're going to talk about, now I read your piece, Al, and I got to say, you know, kind of got me, because it sounded like you were talking about me at first. Well, because you were talking about sociopathic personalities in politics, and I thought, well, that's not me, but then you explained what they are, and you said, let me just say here something about a lack of empathy and remorse coupled with boldness and a lack of inhibition and egotistical traits. And I thought, dang it, I think he's talking about me. Al Gerhart, I appreciate you being here tonight.
Well, we discussed the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath.
Yeah.
And a psychopath basically has no conscience. A sociopath has one, but it's a very weak conscience.
So now, but I'm sorry, there's a horrible setup, but it was so funny to me because I thought it sounded like a setup. But so before you go into the details, because that's where you're headed, is kind of set us up. What are we talking about? Why are we talking about it? And then we're going to talk about sociopaths and psychopaths in politics.
Well, we got a lot of new people coming in, the Trump supporters. We've got like 500 of them are new readers of the newsletter, and we need to kind of prepare them for politics.
Okay.
One of the things people assume is that everybody is on the same side and everybody's getting along. And you have to explain, no, there's going to be factions. And, you have to explain what these factions are sometimes. And the dangerous elements, of course, you want to isolate them, away from the party itself. And, you basically, sometimes you want to kind of, I won't say make excuses, but you want to explain why other groups are a little more hard charging, a little bit more sociopathic. But let me tell you, sociopaths, they're the most successful people that we have because of their drive. When you look at the list of people that have got what would you call them, professions where sociopaths tend to find a home, you're going to find some of the most successful people in the world.
How about that?
Yeah, you list here the common thread is self-control and being at the top of the food chain and being able to control others. You've got a list here, the CEOs, lawyers, media types. See, I knew it. And salespersons or politicians, surgeon, journalist, a police officer, clergy, a chef, and civil servants.
Well, you think about it, a chef is out of business if he doesn't control his product. And he tends to be extremely careful with his reputation. So
sure.
Well, now controlling product, not to be a stickler, but I'm still controlling products, not controlling others. I can see some of this other stuff where the police officer, I've often made the case is that person who wants to control other people often wants to be wearing the badge. That's kind of and we need those. I think you touch on this in your article. We need those types of people in certain situations.
Yeah. I talk about how you have the sheep, you have the shepherds or the sheep herders, and you've got the predators, but there's one other class that's desperately needed in a civil society, and that's the guy that goes out and kills the predators. We've got trappers, we've got, predator control experts. We don't do it like we used to back in the 50s and 60s and before that, but you have to protect, if the shepherd is overwhelmed, he cannot protect the flock. So you're going to need people that go out there and take care of these bad guys. Now, we call them soldiers too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who do the, nobody sits there and thinks, oh boy, gee, wish I could go break things and kill people. But when it comes to war and protecting family and property, sometimes that's what it requires. It's not a pretty job, and yet somebody has to be willing to do it.
That's true. And there's got to be a framework to prevent those people from basically, so it doesn't affect them too badly. Now, don't get me wrong. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was a former soldier. And he said, you don't understand. And most people don't understand what it feels like after you kill a person, for a normal person, probably even for a sociopath, it's not a pleasant thing. So what you do, you need a framework of honor, decency, which is everything is in the military. And also, these are bureaucracies too, by the way. And so you've got to have people that get along with others. They have to enjoy the camaraderie. They have to enjoy the order, and they have to have a definite hierarchy to keep them in control.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last segment we took. Yeah. Van, what do you got?
Well, I was just trying to tie this in to, politics. And I think, right away it came to my mind the Jake and Elwood syndrome, the Blues Brothers, who are on a mission from God, don't you know? And so all of the rules of proper behavior, they felt like got thrown out the window because they had to save the nuns. And so they broke all kinds of laws, and the cops were constantly on them, but they felt justified in their own hearts and minds and rationale because they're on a mission from God. Is that part of it, Al?
It is. We call that moral licensing. And there's two main types, and they're really connected. But the first one is where, okay, someone has got a good reputation, therefore they can do a little bit bad because they're mostly good. Now they have to rationalize that, okay? And that's the difference between the second type. The second type is more like a bank account. Well, I've done some good stuff, therefore I'm allowed to do bad stuff too.
Yeah.
So,
you know, last segment we talked about morality, and I brought up the concept of finding a wallet, saying sometimes, you know, I would return it instantly. So when you talk about a sociopath or a psychopath, I mean, is it the kind of thing? I would suggest that people are not sociopathic all the time in all certain situations, that they may behave sociopathically at times, but that they do not necessarily exhibit those behaviors at all times. Does that sound plausible?
it does indeed. But when you think about it, some of the most horrible crimes humanity's ever seen are not necessarily done by a person like Hitler, but it's done by the millions of people that follow him. So some ordinary people could do some pretty terrible stuff whenever they feel they've got the moral license to do so. Yeah. And it kind of plays into Christianity. Well, I'm sure the Muslims are just as guilty of it. Matter of fact, I would say almost all religions are probably guilty of this at some time, because you got a sense of entitlement. You're told that you're the chosen ones, you're the elite, you're God's family, and that, by the way, whatever we do, we're going to be forgiven anyway. So pretty soon you're going to think like, well, wait a second. And then there's this old theory of, well, if you're not equally yoked with someone, and this comes up in politics a lot, a group will not work with you because you're not of their religion. And therefore, if they work with you, God will abandon them because they're not equally yoked with a partner that's, I guess, equally as pure as they are.
Well, Al, it should be conduct that allows us to work together, not creed, don't you think? I mean, it's as long as our conduct, our beliefs, you know, we have freedom of thought, but it's in working with others, and our you know, our social contract as a society is in our actions, right?
I think, and some of the stuff I've read, Al, I think you and I probably will find some disagreement on how to handle the mask thing. You've called them Cove idiots, and you know, which I can enjoy a good label. But you know, at the same time, I'm not. Again, I think there's a good distinction to be made. I'm not anti-mask. I'm pro-freedom. You want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. I don't care, but don't tell me how to assess my risk. But when it comes to the way that they're pushing down this mask mandate attitude, they use, and this is how I'm trying to tie it into your article. They use what is, I don't call it this, hell, it's ethics. It's rule-utilitarianism. They say, look, we're doing things against the Constitution because it fixes it in the problem. This is, we're going to make you wear a mask, even though it's unconstitutional, because according to utilitarian need, we have to. That is always only one side of the coin, because it's always sandwiched with consequentialism. Because if we don't, we're all going to die. Well, you'll die, and we're all going to die, which the funny thing is, we're all going to die anyway. This idea that you will avoid COVID and then therefore avoid death is ridiculous. You are gonna die, people. And it may be COVID and it may be something else, but avoiding COVID does not avoid death. What say you, Al Gerhart?
Well, I'd say, Tom, that I've grown closer to your side as the months have gone on. And I was all for the COVID idea.
It was a good line.
April, May. When you get into June, it's like, okay, guys, we're either going to get it or we aren't. Let's get back to work. Let's not, as Trump said, don't let the cure be worse than the disease.
Yeah.
And you know, but it's the same thing. You've got people up there, and they believe they know more than anybody else. It's no different than a Christian using scripture to say that, well, we're more equal than you are. Therefore, we have a legal right. Not only that, we probably have a moral responsibility to show you the error of your ways, as unpleasant as that might be. So,
right. The one that the Christians used against me when I would disagree with them in debate, where they say, well, you're clearly deceived by the devil. Well, okay, I guess we're done.
How do you speak to that?
I guess we're done here. Van, what do you got?
Al, guys, I'm going to show you this. I want to show you a screen here.
No.
I don't know what you guys, where are we at? Are we up?
It seems very, very dangerous.
Your screen, but we're not seeing anything. There we go.
What do you got?
How about that?
Hey.
Yeah, this is state representative, or former state representative John Bennett's old legislative Facebook page. I don't know if it got taken over by somebody, hacked, or is this Al? Have you heard anything about this?
I have not. But what, what I just heard?
What?
Did you not hear that too?
What?
I think it was the exploding of David McLean's head. If this is a real, he's done.
Oh my goodness. There he is. He's with yes. Now, what do you know about John Bennett here? Is he legit?
John's a great guy. We met him back in 2010. I met the guy down in Arby's in Henrietta, Oklahoma, and he had some great ideas, was running for office, and someone had told him that, he needed help. So he reached out, and we got a bunch of people together, raised about $1,000 and got him in. And then I think he got out in 2018. I could be wrong. But every time he had a problem, we came in there and beat his opponents mercilessly. There one great story where we're at a football game and we were handing out newspapers at the at the entrance, and the guy running against him was handing out his little cards, and there's pictures, or you've got both sides of this football game. It was before the game. Everybody had their newspaper open. That's all you could see, and it was just hilarious, that we had stolen march that bad on this guy.
Now, who's the publisher of that newspaper? Is that your Guardian?
Center Tea Party. That would be, well, it was, yeah, we branded as the Oklahoma Guardian. We do.
Okay.
But Bennett has been a rock solid. Now, keep in mind, he's from a former Democratic district. Matter of fact, he was the first Republican in state history to take that House seat. So he had to watch out, and he might not have been 100%, but he was always a solid 70 and 75. And on that other little part, he was surviving, which we tell people to do, and he was helping in the background trying to get the rest of it through. So there can be no one better to run for this office than John Bennett.
Now, he was part of the Platform Caucus, correct?
He was indeed.
I believe, yes, and he's been really close with the Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen, I understand. So he's running. That's official, evidently, unless this is a fake. John Bennett's run for Oklahoma State Party Chair.
Once again, breaking news.
10 minutes.
I never did think we were going to break news, but Van continues to prove me wrong. And don't forget, I've been so entertained with Al that I blew right past that 45-minute break. 3D Politics right here, Tommy McKay, all the time, every Monday night right here on 3D Politics Live. Your fine verbal Viking. I got David Van with SoonerPolitics.org. and David Oldham with constitutionalgrounds.com. And thanks to Al Gerhart tonight, also joining us as we discuss psychopaths, sociopaths that are drawn into politics, etc. And so, Al, we appreciate you joining us once again. But I got to say, how is it that these people can take, they can run for, again, it's the same question I have for Oldham every week, and that is, how can a person take the oath of office when they're coming after the Second Amendment, when you're literally against what the Constitution stands for, that you're going to run on that? I don't know how you can take the oath of office.
Well, remember the difference between the two types, sociopath and psychopath, is that one has got a conscience and the other one has a weak conscience. Or doesn't have a conscience, no conscience. Yeah. So the very evolutionary advantage that basically makes us allows us to live in groups is absent from these people. When they break their vow, it's nothing. It's nothing.
This is like a progressive. So I've mentioned that the progressive, the progressive politics is much like the pedophile that grooms their victim. They do everything they do is just the beginning step of getting you where they want you. And so a progressive is a liar by definition. If you shake hands with a progressive and say, okay, we've made a deal. Well, for you, the deal is done. For them, it's the first step of where they're headed. They never are done. They're only always grooming you to get you where they need you as a victim. Progressives are nothing more than pedophiles in public and political office.
Yeah. And I got something to say on that. A TV newscaster, reporter, was talking to me, and it was kind of between times. I think we were at a convention or a watch party, and he finally says, well, listen, that Second Amendment, now, at the time it was written, that only applied to muskets, right, and single shots. And I said, yeah, and the First Amendment only applied to quill pens and ink. Well, all of a sudden he had to rethink his line. He had to come up with a new one.
Yeah.
It's funny that it says arms, which includes any weaponry whatsoever.
That's true.
And the reason that we had the March on Lexington and Concord in 1775 was specifically because they had cannon that the British wanted to get a hold of because they didn't want them being used.
Well, no, that's partially true, but that was where they kept the gunpowder.
Missing contact.
So
it was all sorts of things. There was everything.
In other words, it's not just the right to arms, but it's the right to the ammunition to use in those arms.
Oh yeah.
So not to get into it, but a slingshot used by David against Goliath would also be arms.
Oh yeah.
That's about that. So I think Al Gerhart might have answered the eternal question of TomE, and that is, how can these people take an oath of office to uphold and protect the Constitution while also simultaneously desiring to tear down the Constitution? Is because they are psychopaths.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sociopathic.
Psychopathic.
I think it's more often sociopathic.
We believe that is it. Yeah. So sociopaths. They're incredibly disconnected. One 15-minute segment doesn't connect to the next 15-minute segment for them.
In the words of the late former Senator Bob Kerrey, not John Kerry, but Bob Kerrey, he said, you have to understand this about Bill Clinton. He's not just a liar. He is a very, very good liar. And he said that on the floor of the Senate.
Nice.
Yes.
Well,
And he was a fellow Democrat.
Yeah.
The other thing they're really good at is picking which commandments or which constitutional provisions, Bill of Rights, they like to support. Now, if you're a pastor, you're going to pick on homosexuality, and you're going to pick on I guess, what would be the other big one, David?
Oh, drinking, drugs.
That's true. That's true.
Yep.
Promiscuity and premarital sex.
Yeah. Well, murder, I guess they want to pick that.
That's easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, if you're like the fundamental Baptist, it's dress length. Or dancing,
listen.
or
when I grew up in the
like
70s, the Baptists, the fundamentalists were against premarital sex because it led to dancing.
Oh my gosh!
Well, they like to pick though which constitutional rights they want to enforce, and it's no different than a preacher sitting there, and he's not going to preach to his congregation about gluttony or pride when they're sitting half of them exactly
because he's a proud fat man.
Okay. So let's go after abortion. Let's go after murder. Let's go after the homosexuals.
So this is where. So when you mention gluttony, that resonates with me. Well, so what I'm saying is, and this is the argument I've had about the LBGT question mark group, and so I have had to say to people, say, well, whether the homosexuals should be allowed to go to church. I'm like, well, I'm allowed to go. I mean, I'm a glutton at least, you know? And so I want to go to church too, right? So I don't want to prohibit some other sinner just because I know, but the difference between me as a glutton and a homosexual is I don't have glutton parades. I'm so prideful of my gluttony, and that we should have more gluttons in office, and that America should be, you know, as many gluttons represent. I mean, what do you want to represent gluttony? No, I'm a glutton, but you want to promote that and make it the model. So what? I mean, you know, this is insane.
This was kind of the impetus of writing that story, was that the Sooner Tea Party was accused by a couple of the far-right groups, OPAC and the abolitionists, of being pro-LGBTQ, which, is that the right term for them anymore? And we weren't. What I made the mistake of saying was that the gays have got really good political instincts and tactics. And when I praised them for their tactics, all of a sudden, boy, I'm the LGBTQ.
Well, they didn't hear anything past the gays. Exactly. That is where when you said the gays, then their ears shut down, and they never heard anything past that. Okay.
Yeah.
What would they do if Trump showed up? And you know, Trump he's known as the most supportive gay. I get the president there is. He's not gay, but he supports the gays.
Stop! Don't tell us that.
I know, but I mean, we're talking about they put a guy on the Ninth Circuit Court that's an openly gay Filipino. He put a gay guy.
So the thing is, okay, here's the deal. And I read your article.
Stone him too.
So let me throw another rock. Tom, you already throw 10. Yeah, but I'm a glutton. So the thing is it's not about so when I read your article, it wasn't, and then it came down to whether the Tea Party supports gay rights. Well, here's the thing is here's my opinion, that because the Tea Party is properly oriented towards individual rights and the protection thereof, then they damn sure do protect gay rights, because the gays are free to be as gay as they want, except, as you say in the article properly, you don't get to infringe on me. And I would add to your article, don't change the meaning of words. You know, marriage is one meaning.
You want, just not on me. And you know, that kind of a thing. And
so every single building and every single structure ever built by man is thanks to heterosexual behavior. Every homosexual ever born that ever did anything is thanks to heterosexual behavior. And so gays need to pay more taxes than heterosexuals, because they are not adding to the benefit of society financially. They don't create any natural average taxpayers.
I wouldn't say that we're supportive of gay rights. We're supportive of human rights, and we don't want to rub it in our face, but we're tolerant.
Al.
Yes, sir.
Are gays humans?
Of course they are.
Then you support gay rights.
No.
They are humans.
No, Tom, let me weigh in on this.
Al can take it. Al can take it.
I'm going to get stoned by these crazies.
Al's tough. He can take it.
Gays get human rights like everybody else. I'm against them getting special rights.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, yes, but we support
such thing as gay rights. There's natural rights.
Okay, I stand corrected, Oldham, because it's not group rights we have; it's individual rights. Exactly. So the Sooner Tea Party does not stand for group rights, whether they're gay rights or any other rights. Right. They stand for individual rights.
Nor can
I stand corrected.
Nor can you lump Sooner Tea Party in with those who promote such behavior, which is ultimately the accusation. Right. And that's just not true. I know Al, and I know he's not.
No, but I mean, I was trying to clarify a fine adjustment there, and I stand corrected, and I understand the difference. So, way to go, Al Gerhart. Well, actually, Oldham is the one who brought the light to me.
All right. Yeah.
Well, the entire article was basically because we were attacked for that, but it was a great opportunity to point out where people that are single issue voters or single issue people, activists, they really do have a hard time functioning in a political party. because it's all about purity and they care nothing about the rest of the issues. And my concern was that we can't allow people that are I'm sorry, they're religious bigots, okay? Their religion tells them, and look here, it may be that homosexuality is condemned in the Bible, okay? But I was talking to a friend of mine, a Christian friend of mine today, and because a guy had written in saying, well, he had a problem with going to church and having to sit next to a gay couple. And he said, is this wrong for me feeling this way? And so to answer that question, I called a friend of mine that's pretty religious. And he said, well, whose church is it? Is it his church or is it God's church?
Ooh.
Well, I would answer that question completely differently, and I would come straight from the Bible. But and I would say that the church itself was the problem, and what the hell are you doing in the church? But that's allowing gays in it. But the point is, because I mean that.
Nice knowing you, David.
The point is this. That is a different question than getting into right.
Yeah.
You know, a church can deny somebody, and I was a part of a church that people said, "Can we come to your church?" And we just said no, and that was our standard answer to most people because they were not fit to be in our church.
Mm-hmm.
The
freedom of association.
Exactly, but if you want to be the Unitarian gay church led, you know, by the weirdest person you could possibly imagine, the freakiest hippie-ish kind of a thing, that's on you. You can do what you want. And we have the freedom, the First Amendment freedom, which was really created so that we could evangelize the unwashed.
Okay, quick weigh in here. There is a difference between the preaching of the gospel, which is to be open and free and for all of humanity, and then there is a commitment to being a member of a church. And in 1 Corinthians 5, for those who want to get into it, you have the situation where they do discipline within the church on people's conduct. But the Apostle Paul said in that, he said, now that's for in the church. It's not the church's job to judge those outside the church. Right. God does that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, wow, we all agreed.
Exactly. We can't force somebody else to behave like we want them to behave. And that's
the legislature thinks so.
Well,
and if we do, we're immoral, you know.
But remember, they suffer from the divine right of election. They think that they have this divine right by election that they can dictate to the rest of us. And the point is, that's sociopathic behavior.
Right. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank Al Gerhart for being here tonight. Al, always exciting. Please come back again on a regular basis.
Human rights, not gay rights, please.
There you go.
Hey, I stand corrected, but the point is that's important is for me to go out on that limb so that our viewers can all also be enlightened.
You're not
Al
wrong.
Gerhart, way to go. I appreciate everything you were doing before 3D Politics even got started. We're going to send you away now. And once again, check out Al Gerhart right there at Sooner Tea Party. Go find him out there. Al, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Good night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, kids. 3D Politics, it never fails to amaze. We got 3 more stories to get through before it's all said and done because we worked hard on tonight's story. But I got to say, we're pushing deeper and deeper. Oh, yes. It just gets better.
Tim, applause. We are getting fancy.
Trying to help everybody out.
We're going to have stadium noise behind us because you know, without that, the NFL would be nothing.
Hey, would you rather have the Stuart Smalley self-affirming, quotes? I am loved. I am somebody. I am special.
Here's the one you don't want to hear.
Or Jeb Bush. Please clap.
People love me.
Yes.
Here's the one you don't want to hear.
Take off your latex gloves. Show me your fingers.
Oh, man.
when I heard
what
this,
a night.
I just
guys, it's on.
when I heard that thing. I listened to that Oklahoma manicure. I was like, well, it was October. My God, that's dark. So it's scary. But Al Gerhart, he always brings it in like it looks like something out of the Matrix. He looks like he's on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere.
I think he intends
piping
to
it
do that.
in. It's like
it's part of his shtick, his mistake.
Pretty good. It looks pretty good. It looks dangerous almost, you know?
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good. Al always brings a solid info and solid delivery. Hey, so now, wow, we just knocked him down, David.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State Board of Education suspended school report card letter grades for 2021 due to disruptions caused by pandemic.
Everything's fine.
Don't you wish you could just quit paying your taxes? Because it's like, oh my God, I had a disruption in service and stuff. You know, so tell it before I go on.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, because I'm so ticked.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's something they teach in journalism that anything that comes out on a Friday afternoon is probably something that they just kind of want everybody to pretend they didn't hear.
Don't retweet Friday.
And so last Friday, they announced that the Oklahoma State Superintendent of Schools, Joy Hoffmeister, you know, she just said, yeah, we're not going to gauge the performance of our schools this year because of COVID. Now, normally you would think this is the most important year to find out how badly our kids are doing because we have good reason to believe they're doing horribly. But they don't want to know that.
From KFOR by Hakim Rosh, or however he pronounces it, December 17th, states, and this is second paragraph, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Joy Hoffmeister said the abrupt end of the 2019-20 school year and the tumultuous current school year made it necessary to, quote unquote, disentangle accountability from the administering of assessments this spring.
Yes.
End of quote. Disentangle.
Tom, there's no evidence that our kids are.
Hold on. Oldham's meter is reading. Yeah, you heard me right. Disentangle accountability.
I love
Not really.
play.
I don't want to divorce my wife. I just want to disentangle my accountability. That's Joy Hoffmeister. Wow. I wonder what her safe word is.
Yeah, some of us learned about that 6 years ago, but that's another story.
Well, I'm probably guilty of that. Joy Hoffmeister. That's a cute name.
I mean, think what you're telling parents. You're saying, no, we're not going to tell you how badly the cancer is, expanding because, it's bad news. So we're just not going to run tests.
Well, I've got a bad cough. I better not go in because I'll get a bad result.
Oh, don't go to the doctor when you're feeling bad.
Man, my knee hurts. I better not check it out because they might tell me my knee is screwed up.
Listen, Hoffmeister is owned by the bureaucrats and the union. She always has been. This is what you get.
What does she head? One of the two most socialist programs we have in the state.
We should
public education. It's pure bureaucracy. That's all it is socialist bureaucracy.
I love that Oldham gets worse than me.
More than 1/3 of our appropriated tax dollars goes to her department.
Yep.
And they suck. And now they don't want to tell us how bad they suck.
I drove by the Tulsa Public Schools Education Service Center the other day,
which used to be a high school.
That's how big the brand is on fire.
They took over a whole high school.
I counted by my best estimate as I kept my eyes on the road, but at the same time estimated vehicles in their parking lot. There was like 20 to 25 police vehicles. At Tulsa public school police vehicles that I'm paying for. That doesn't count the trucks and the vans and a couple of school buses. So you call yourself the Education Service Center. You got police vehicles, and the main thing you do is feed children.
Yeah.
So what do you really do? You take money from the federal government to pretend you feed children and to pay for cars that are parked in your Education Service Center. This is absolutely real. And then the sickest, most horrible thing about, sadistic thing about it is, Joy Hoffmeister knows over the last 50 years, parents have been trained to not have any effing idea what the word disentangle or accountability means, because they've been controlling the public schools, and the parents don't know what disentangled accountability means. This is insane.
Tom, what would it cost for, let's say, a 12-year-old or 14-year-old go to Bishop Kelly? What roughly does it cost a year?
The wife does the money. It's thousands.
Okay, would
thousands.
be 10.
That's after you pay. It's after you pay for the public schools first.
Right, yeah, but I need a number. 10 grand?
25 grand, maybe?
Oh, really went up.
Don't ask me. I don't do the numbers.
Okay, the public schools, Tulsa Public Schools, gets more than 10 grand per kid. You know, that's in line with like a Metro Christian or Victory Christian. And so for the cost of running an elite prep school, you're getting crap for your kids.
Right.
Crap.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had this discussion with public school teachers, and I'm like, for the kind of money that they're getting per student, I could have, I mean, basically I could create an elite prep school, and they're like, no, I don't see how that can possibly be blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, it's easy.
So
I mean, for that kind of money, do the math.
In Oklahoma alone, back in the walkout 2018 with the teacher strike, I'll call it, you do some simple research, a simple guy like me, $2.5 billion every 360 some odd days for education in Oklahoma alone. Only Oklahoma. That's 2.5 billion. And they're like, we're underfunded. I was like, man, I could invent a population and create a product that can't exist and sell it for a profit if you gave me 2.5 billion every 365 days, subsidized by the government.
Now, I'm not going to just blame the bloated big public schools. I'm also going to blame our state and federal regulations on public schools. 1889 Institute did a spreadsheet on all the regulations over how many desks, the size of the desks, you know, the school lunch program, the busing program, all the things. You have no idea the volumes and volumes of regulations and hoops they have to jump through, and just compliance with all of that is insane. That's why you've got charter schools wanting to open up, and why you got parents saying, please let me take my kid to a charter school.
Well, the charter schools put out students that can actually have learned is a whole nother thing. Let me share this thing also. This has to do with the Oklahoma State Board of Education passed a 6-0 vote Thursday morning to suspend school report cards for the year, just like what we're talking about. So I made the comment that property tax refund for report card suspension. Now, these people, I want my money back. And so some guy says, and I've messed it up here. Somebody responded to me. Let me see if I can get to it here.
Oh, Tom went on a social media rant again, folks.
Oh, I know what it was. Look, they see how they show additional replies. See how they've squandered it. So this guy here's this Tulsa Patriot Patrol, some idiot, it's French for moron, He says report cards for schools, not report for kids. It's in the tweet, as though I'm so stupid that I didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, my demand remains the same. Where there is no unit of measure for the redistribution of my wealth in the big ed, which stands for big education.
Yep.
There is no calculation for the representation of my property taxes within the public schools. And then if you'll look at this chart, you'll see the flat line of the SAT juxtaposed to the dollars per pupil over a 40-year period, where the money has gone insane up the ramp, and the SAT score adjusted for participation and demographics remains flat over 40 years. And this graphic alone describes for you why the education system got off of the SAT and moved over to the ACT for the same reason they're pulling down General Lee's statue. They don't want you to see the history of the failure of the public schools, ladies and gentlemen.
And let's also, I'm hoping for our listeners, for you, Tom, that you'll start talking about a tax revolt rather than a tax rebate, because remember that the taxes taken out for public education are 100% illegal according to our U.S. Constitution and our state constitution. Our state constitution says in two places, it says that you have the right to the proceeds, the gains of your own industry, and it says that no property shall be taken for public, or it says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The U.S. Constitution says that no property shall be taken for public use without just compensation. So there's no flipping way. I don't cuss, and I'm on the verge of cussing.
Oh my God, he said flipping. That's why I'm here, Oldham. I will do all the cursing for you.
I mean, just it boggles the mind. We need a tax revolt to bring this about.
I tell you, it was 30 years ago. As a young man, one of my first conversations with my state senator, Don Rubottom, we were talking about this whole public school system and said, why should the state have any role? We set up school districts to be separate from all other government with one task, and that's to educate the kids. That's the school district, and it has its own boundaries and it's set up,
it has its own government.
However, here's my point. Don Rubin says, yes, except that our Oklahoma Constitution says the state shall provide a common education for all the inhabitants of, children.
They can only do that if they can do it by voluntary contributions or somehow not depriving anybody of their individual rights, provide the funds for it. So that's the only way they can actually accomplish that. Medicaid, Medicare, the same thing.
Okay. So let me tie this in. At the time, they said common education. That meant up through third grade, and that was school between November and March, between, when we weren't in planting or farming season. Really? So when you're defining it, you're defining a much different situation. So, I mean, you want to teach people how to count, right? So they had basic stuff. What's happened is that bureaucracy has grown over the years. The other factor I want to say is when the federal government acknowledged our state, the federal government set aside a whole bunch of land called the School Land Trust. Mm-hmm. And it was in the proceeds of leasing out that land to farmers or actually building a school on it or whatever, that was the federal government saying, this is going to be in a, in a trust, in an endowment. And that was supposed to fund our school system. And it probably would have been enough if we'd only been paying for through third grade and from November through March. Now, you could still go get further education.
Okay, the
government wasn't responsible for the higher ed.
And
fourth grade.
We also weren't running Meals on Wheels to the children who weren't in school. They were educating instead of feeding the need and doing the dental work and having a counselor and making sure that their fingernails were clean. And what the hell, man? They were taking them.
This is mission creep. Yes.
Absolutely insane.
Yep.
It's just off the edge. Hey, we got to bring up another story. We're never going to get out of here. We're never low on energy for stories. 3D Politics every Monday night. Tommy McKay, your verbal Viking, here as usual with the crew that fights for all your rights, even if you don't want them. David Van from soonerpolitics.org and David Oldham, constitutionalgrounds.com. I want to thank again our guests for tonight, Mark Thomas and also Al Gerhart. Don't forget, Tuesday night, that's tomorrow night, there's a big rally, the hashtag Keep Christmas rally, advocating for our constitutional liberties. It's at 101 Green Valley Drive, Manford, Oklahoma, 6 p.m. We've got speakers out there: William James, Cody Marler, Jonathan Dupie, David Oldham, Rob Ford, Sonny James, David Van will be speaking, Brett Bowling, and potentially
we'll have mugs.
We have mugs and a free giveaway. But again, I want to appreciate you guys for coming out once again, fighting for everybody. Al Gerhart, and of course, a member of the Lost Tribe of the Electors, Mark Thomas.
Yeah.
I swear, it wasn't until last week I realized that the Electoral College is literally people, that they were fake. I thought it was fake. Restaurants win a restraining order against able governor. Here's where the fake news media ought to literally be telling us. 6 taverns win temporary rights to stay open to 2 a.m. from soonerpolitics.org. December 20th this year. Frank Urbanik, an Oklahoma civil rights attorney, just restored the rights of 6 Oklahoma taverns and restaurants to remain fully open the statutory 2 a.m. business hours, which that means by law they've been allowed to stay open until 2 a.m. The Judges Act applies only to the 6 plaintiff restaurants and taverns because they were the only ones who fought back. This ought to encourage more restaurants to defend their rights and claim their liberties and hold the government to accountability. This is the key to this article on Sooner Politics, if you ask me, is the fact that these 6 plaintiffs fought back and won rights for themselves. But that didn't open the door for anybody else that's still being infringed. Van, tell us about it.
Yeah, Frank, who let's scroll back up to the picture there. That's Frank, the skinny guy, and a couple of his clients, and he filed it there. Somebody took a picture of it. So, Frank's been, talking to some of us. I know Oldham's had some conversations, and he's talked to me, and he exposes. We've talked about it on the show. The governor is not following the prescribed statutory framework for a health emergency, which everybody agrees that this is what we're looking at. Not a natural disaster, not a state of riot yet, but we have a health emergency that we're looking at. He did that last spring after Frank called him out on his unconstitutional behavior. So he's at it again. And I tell you what, he's risking impeachment over this, folks. He's risking impeachment because the legislature must be playing their role in this, and he's ignoring them.
Yep, they should. And just so you know, the action of those 6 has had an effect on the rest of the state. Able has announced, because of this ruling, and this is just a temporary restraining order.
It is
on the due to the on this order. The temporary is because they go back to court on the 30th of this month.
That's right.
And so, but what has happened is Able has declared that they are not going to be enforcing this order that they issued. On any business around the state. So Able is out of the picture.
You remember a couple of weeks ago when the guy, I brought up TomE's Twitter tirades, and the guy was on me about the mask, and no, we don't want to use force. We don't want to use force. Yank their licenses, you know. So they do want to yank their licenses. And he said, they were saying, let's use a commission like the Able Commission was their literally their reference to enforce the law. And this here is where they're fighting back. Also from the Sooner Politics 1220 article, what are proper agency rules? It talks about they are required to publish proposed rules and allow for public comment. And the idea is that these rules may not exceed statutory language, which the legislature has authorized. It simply fleshes out the statutory intent. So, Oldham, what does it mean that they're going to write language that doesn't mean law? It just only fleshes something out.
Well, it's what we saw, and we talked about at length back in April or May, when the health department was doing the same thing, when they were creating language that wasn't in statute and going to require all kids or all families who don't get their kids vaccinated to have to jump through hoops, go down to the health department and so forth, see a video, blah, blah, blah.
Propaganda films. Got to watch propaganda films.
Got to watch the propaganda films, the big pharma propaganda films. Well, the same thing is going on here, that Able created rules, just created them out of thin air, just like the health departments are doing in every city and county where they exist in the state. Okay, they just create the rules, declare them, and then start enforcing them as soon as they've sent out a warning letter to their clientele.
They're motivated by a divine entitlement. They're divinely appointed. They need to.
Well, they're bureaucrats, so they can't suffer from divine right of election. They have just divine right of government. And no, they actually believe this. They actually think that they have the authority, that they have sovereign authority over us just because
they've been authorized by the legislature in statutes is what they're going to say. Right?
Well, and anytime you're legislated to, you're not, if you are authorized to do something, you don't just sit there and say, okay, I watched it. You say, man, I got to put my fingerprint on it. They have this has been discussed about legislators. You don't just go up there to govern and maintain. You got to come up with a law to make sure somebody's restricted, but only the law abiding are restricted. So every law that's added, we're only restrict the law abiding.
Yeah. Man. Now, Tom, you were reading from how agency rules normally happen. There's a second set in our statutes that are called emergency rules.
Right.
And when that happens three different ways, you could either have a state of widespread riots, such as what the governor was trying to hint that was going on. And by the way, which Able now is hinting at as their justification for yanking your license. Number two might be, for instance, a natural or man-made disaster, like, an F5 wipes out a third of the state, or a nuclear explosion or something like that. But then the third one that Frank actually helped get carved, put into process early last April was the health emergency, which actually says, no, the legislature directly comes into special session. Doesn't matter what time it is. And the legislature has to authorize it. And then the legislature has a special oversight committee, and it only lasts 30 days.
But remember, that's like the War Powers Act. It's a stopgap. It never deals with the real problem, and that is government has no authority over our personal health decisions.
Right. We're not victimizing anyone.
What's that?
We're not victimizing anyone.
No, and they have to prove that we have and take us to court on it and prove their case. If they're going to deprive somebody, force them to wear a mask, force them to do anything, shut down early, whatever, they have to show that there's cause.
Yeah.
And they have not done it. Instead, they've created these bills of attainder, and they just, it's all rhetoric.
Yeah, like water.
Therefore, we have to.
Just like water, government officials will always find the path of least resistance.
Right.
Back in the 95, 96, I was arguing against the teen curfew in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so these people were, all they were doing was trying to set up a thing where they were combining the meaning of words between minor. A minor could be 17 years old or 5 years old. And so, again, they were just creating these rules. And when I went and argued that, I was studying the laws to prepare myself to argue that, and I kept seeing something jump out at me, and that was these giant words that were in parentheses with all caps that said the city council passed this under an emergency clause. And the emergency clause has been a standard procedure of avoiding the standard scrutiny of constitutional agreement with the people. Because when I went to argue the curfew, I was reading stuff and I found that the city council in circa 1995, 96 had passed a municipal employees retirement fund under an emergency clause. And I said at the city council, when I went and complained about the curfew, I said, who needed to retire in such a hurry that they would have to emergency for? Well, the fact is, when they pass stuff under emergency clause, it doesn't have to wait the 60 days and it doesn't have to be published by anything, because they're pretending like there's really an emergency. And the fact is, it's a false flag. They're pretending there's an emergency to pass a municipal city's employment fund measure tax.
Yeah. And Tom, go ahead, Oldham.
I was just to finish that point, is even if the emergency was real, they don't have the authority most of the time to do what they're doing. So even if it's a real, like a pandemic, I mean, like COVID, it's real, they still don't have the authority.
Well, and there are checks and balances built into it, whether it's a legislative process or simply Robert's Rules of Order. Like you've been to, let's say, a business meeting where they're operating Robert's Rules of Order. First thing they do is they approve the minutes of the last meeting. You know why they do that? Well, you want to get that out of the way, because if somebody disapproves it, you can undo all of the last meeting's business by saying, no, it didn't happen.
Right.
Okay. So here's what happens with this. If the legislature passes a law, it can't go into effect for 6 months unless there's an emergency clause.
Right.
Now, here's where it's important. In Oklahoma, we have what's called a veto referendum. And if government passes a law or a tax or appropriation, whatever, and we want to challenge it, we can, unless they pass an emergency clause. It goes into effect, and it's a lot tougher for us to try to bring it to the people for a vote before
our time frame to get it to a vote is shortened to the point of almost impossibility.
Right.
This is as old. Go ahead.
It becomes a political maneuver to prevent obstacles from preventing it, to prevent accountability.
That pesky Constitution.
This is essentially, so in ancient Rome, the word dictator and the concept of a dictator was essentially their words. The Roman Empire, the dictator was their emergency clause, because they had a republic. Essentially, there were citizens. Now, when the Senate would elect a dictator, that was because there was an emergency and they needed someone to be able to not have to go through the regular protocol of getting authorization to make movement of troops and such. Yeah. So it was a very reasonable and understandable concept within a republic that they should at some times allow the governing person to be quote unquote dictator. And the dictator in Rome was like, I forget that it was a sunsetted deal. It was only for 6 months. It's like, I forget the exact time period, but it was a certain period of time and it was over and sunsetted. And that was the fear though of Rome, was that once you elected someone dictator for a while, they would never quit. and they would just
That's right.
continue to be dictator. And I
Yeah.
believe, I don't know it well enough, but I think that was a problem a couple of times.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I mean, the concept of governments everywhere over the world using the concept of emergency
Yeah.
as a way to coerce and bull rush people out of their constitutional and civic rights.
Yeah.
It's a standard procedure. It happens always. And so it's boiled down. Never let a crisis go to waste. There it is. What do you want? There it is.
Yeah. So for this reason, I'm saying, Frank Urbanek's well in the running for this year's Citizen of the Year, and I'm definitely taking advice and nomination bids for the next.
And he tried real hard back in June, and came up empty, trying some things, but learned some other things from those cases. Down in Lawton, wasn't it? Or down
there were several cities. Guthrie was one
that he was suing. And anyway, he learned from it, and now he's had a measure of success. We'll see where it goes. But the man-made disaster here is these businesses who are having their rights deprived, their rights to be deprived. I mean, just to be and to operate as what they are. I get into the problem that there's a curfew, that there's a 2 a.m. end date. I say government doesn't have authority. But the thing is that okay, question for another day. But the point is that to say no, nothing ever, no, just because we've declared it, like in New York, it's an orange zone, so therefore we're going to arrest you. And across the street or just down the block, it's a red zone. He gets to stay open.
Well, and the problem is because you're being held to what they call a standard, but it's not a standard because it's progressive humanistic standard, which means today, literally, they're flying Freddie Mercury in my face as some sort of moral standard for my behavior with the mask. I'm like, don't push Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury? What, you have to wear a mask because of him, because he had AIDS?
You haven't seen the thing where they say, wear a mask on your face, spreading your germs all over the place. You're a big disgrace or whatever. Trying to mimic the Freddie Mercury Queen song, We're the Champions. You're spreading your germs all over the place. And I'm like, I don't want to wear a mask. And you're trying to morally shame me with Freddie Mercury. I mean,
hey, I just saw,
and then I said,
an Eric Clapton, a new Eric Clapton song where he and his group is against the mask mandates. And so he's come out on the right side of things. And there's been a bunch of artists that are creating new music for it.
I told this gal, don't try to shame me with Freddie Mercury. You're telling me I'm spreading the virus when Freddie Mercury literally was spreading HIV. She said, she typed and said on her Facebook, she said, he didn't spread it, he contracted it.
Oh,
there's
crazy. He's only a victim, folks.
Kiss me.
Only.
Just kiss me. I only want to contract.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, hey, Van, back to this thing. What is the proper enforcement of agency rules? And the article from Sooner Politics excerpt says the state has the burden of proving that a crime has occurred and that the law is properly established, justly enforced. So how does that apply here?
Well, I mean, they have to prove, first of all, when you make a rule, you have to set a justification why it meets that necessary goal. Well, when you create a rush hour at 10:30 at night, because everybody's got to get there and get their orders in before 11, you do the opposite of your claimed social spreading agenda. I mean, social distancing agenda. So, I don't like to go to a restaurant when it's the most packed. I like to spread. If I can wait till 3 to eat a late lunch, I'm safer than when it's crowded and everybody's breathing on each other.
You're sitting down. COVID only comes to here. If you're sitting down, it's above you.
Yeah. Now, what I have, talking to some people, because I'm not a bar type person, okay? I'm a teetotaler by choice, but I don't judge those who want to,
Oh, yes, you do, David.
Well, no, but, somebody told me, well, you have to understand the busiest time of the night at a bar is between 11 and 2, especially on weekends. Yeah. Okay. That's when it's
like
hot.
Sunday is the busiest time for a church, and Easter they shut those down too.
Yeah, so imagine.
Come on, man.
Imagine telling a food truck you can go anywhere except during the meal hours.
Right.
That's just asinine, and that's
what you were saying with the firearms.
They pick and choose. They pick and choose who they do that to, because they don't do that to Walmart. They don't do that to the other big box stores. And they don't do that to, people they considered essential for whatever arbitrary reason they do. So yeah, I'm done. I mean,
he's done.
I'm done. I'm sorry.
He has, what was the line he has entangled? What was that line from the school thing where he
disentangled from accountability?
Yeah, the accountability.
I want to be disentangled from accountability.
He's disentangled himself from accountability.
Disentangle me from my accountability.
So consider yourself disentangled.
Gee, thanks.
So
I feel better now.
The sooner well, you look good. Sooner politics take, it may be that Stitt is trying to. Is this real? Are you trying? What is this? See, I thought.
What
is this?
Read the line. Read the line.
Is this hyperbole, Van?
What is it? Say it, and then we can all be.
It may be that Stitt is trying to limit the role of the legislature.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You think that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, do you think
I think he's fighting for his life?
Do you think he really wanted Chris Kennedy, the Judiciary Committee chairman, looking over his shoulder for everything he did last April? Do you think he wants a replay of that? Right now, the leadership of the legislature is very much at odds with the governor. Remember, they overrode his veto of the annual budget. Governor basically lost his participation role in that. He's neutered in many ways.
I'm going to be corrected twice in one show. Man, this is like.
Well, I mean, you asked me my opinion. Yes, I meant it. I think he's avoiding accountability.
So when I read that line, I thought, it was like, conspiratorial, like a bigger issue. But I mean, and again, still, I want to minimize what you're saying. Like it's a fight between him and the people that are in the legislature. Not that he's trying to make some overture that the governor role is bigger than the legislature.
Oh, well, you've always got that battle between the executive and legislative branch.
All right.
It always exists, and who wants to be second guessed? And it's sad because a year ago things were really good between the governor and legislature. Mm-hmm. They had one of the best sessions, and then we had last year's session. And I'm sorry, but I really am second guessing Governor Stitt's commitment to liberty here. I really am.
Wow, I mean. I see him as a victim. I mean, I'm saying, I think he is up against a rock and a hard place. I think he came in to do the right thing, and he's getting smacked. Well, what do you think?
This is where I'm hoping that leaders will listen to us, because the answer, I think he's getting pressure for sure. Yeah. To do these kinds of things. I mean, look at all the city councilors are getting pressure to do mass dance or mask mandates. And I think there is pressure, but I think that what needs to happen is they need to remember, and they need to get out more and mix with the people more. And you'll find that people are sick and tired of this stuff, and they want to just get on with life. I see so many people now walking in, they don't have a mask on at all, but they put it on dutifully to keep from having any problem with anybody in the store as they go in the store, but they don't have it on any other time.
Okay, look.
And so I think he's wrestling with some of that, and he needs to be educated on the fact that he doesn't have the authority to go there. So therefore, you know, he should be able to put that to rest by saying, look, the law doesn't allow me to do it. So
well,
all right, Van, finish this one off. We're going to set up one more time with one more story. Go ahead.
We just had a big referendum on the national policy having to deal with this pandemic. And how did Oklahoma vote? It wasn't even close. We voted with Trump's policy, not with Joe Biden's.
So Van, I bet you're going to stick behind this one. Stitt may face a motion of impeachment if the legislature deems Stitt's action to be an attack on the constitutional powers.
Yeah, it's still based on what's political advantage.
I don't see him facing impeachment, but I do. No. Go ahead,
Tom. We've had several governors face impeachment.
Well, you know better than me. I'm representing the people who don't know what you know.
Yeah, about 45 years ago, maybe 55 years ago, actually, we impeached 3 Supreme Court justices and threw them out and sent 2 of them to prison. Our legislature will not tolerate being bullied, or shouldn't tolerate being bullied by the executive or judicial branch.
They just tell me drive through and we'll bring it out. That's what they tell me.
Yeah, I'm just saying the legislature has a role here, and the governor is deliberately going around them when he should have been doing what he did last April.
Well, he's at least using the emergency clause, just like the city council did, to pass their municipal cities employment. David Van from SoonerPolitics.org setting me right. David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com teaching me what I need to know and how I'm wrong all the time. I'm not wrong all the time, but here I am, your fine host, your perspicuous plunderer of conversation, your verbal Viking, Tommy McKay, at Facebook, Tommy McKay, and Twitter. And we got one more story. Legislature ignores the 2-tier justice system in Indian territories. David Van's going to talk to us about a story from Sooner Politics 12/21/2020. The Supreme Court's McGirt ruling of 2020 set up an unconstitutional 2-tier justice system in eastern Oklahoma. Go, Van.
Yeah, Tom, this news story is about what's not in the news. I went through all the filings so far because already the new legislature is filing bills. Okay. And there's not a single bill that addresses the vast distinction between some of our state statutory punishments for certain felony crimes, right, and then what the federal statutes are for essentially the same crime. And I use as an example what happened here with our election board judge some 35 years ago, Harmon Moore. He embezzled $16,000. Okay, that's serious. They got 7 years for $16,000. And then just 5 years ago, Senator Rick Brinkley embezzles $1.8 million, over 100 times as much, and gets half of the sentence. That's the difference between whether you get punished in federal courts or in state courts. Why is this important? Because the Supreme Court just ruled that all the Indian population in Oklahoma, in the Indian territories, are not subject to our state law anymore on these major crimes. They're not even subject to our laws on speeding infractions. And this is a problem. And I'm telling these lawmakers, somebody's got to start working on this.
They're creating an area where there's no nobody's taking ownership of it. Yeah. So it's like we talked about with North Tulsa. It's like some people call North Tulsa calls North Tulsa this to a certain border. South Tulsa calls North Tulsa this to a certain border. And there's a little area that's neglected. It's called a food desert. Yeah. So, I mean, the same thing is happening here where they are defining and well, it's only this is, I think, David, part of your panic in a way, not panic, but your concern.
Alarm. It's an alarm.
Because it's only at the beginning where these problems are going to happen because, I mean, they're creating an area where the wild is going to grow. If they're not pulling people over simply because they have an Oklahoma or the Cherokee tag. Well, it just causes a huge issue, which I got to say, our founding fathers were benevolent to God to the point where then when they conquered, quote unquote, the Native Americans, they didn't just smash them down, even though you say, well, yeah, they did. They were beaten to speak their language and da. The point is, they still have a sovereign government within our government, which is literally causing a problem. I mean, it's causing a problem. There's a certain amount of value to be said to crush your enemy all the way.
Okay, you know? So Tom, I'm sorry, Alden, were you saying something?
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom, remember this whole charade we went through all summer long about the graffiti on Black Wall Street, right? On Greenwood Avenue. Sir. Okay, and then they finally cleaned it up. But they had to throw a bunch of money in government spending in order to pacify the people while they got rid of the graffiti. And then a few very brave souls decided they were going to put Black Lives Matter right in front of City Hall, right downtown. What happened to them, Tom? They all got citations and it got cleaned up right away. Okay,
arbitrary enforcement.
But Tom, if a member of the Cherokee tribe was to go out in front of his street and paint "Tribes Matter" in Tulsa proper, they couldn't punish you unless they could get your tribe to punish you.
Let's say, David Oldham, thank you. They could punish the hell out of me until I complain and show damages, and then I might get something back later. I mean, listen to Tim Hubbard, right?
This is the funny thing about this thing, because this was supposed to be the Major Crimes Act, but the local authorities are taking it out beyond the Major Crimes Act. So, I don't know about the veracity of whether or not an Indian could be charged for, defacing public property or, something along those lines. But the, state property, Oklahoma state property, I don't know. But the thing is that it's not supposed to be. It was supposed to be very limited. But this has been the concern of all of us: is how is it going to play?
Yeah.
And are we going to lose our properties that we've bought and paid for and been in for years, because ultimately, this goes to its natural conclusion and they get everything back, even though they sold it years ago.
Yeah, no, I have to tell you, that was my first concern. I bought a house here in Creek territory, right? So, but I was told, no, even before 1889, if they sold the property to somebody, that sale stood, whether that person was tribal member or not.
Right.
So that much, I've been given pretty strong legal counsel that that's not an issue, but it has to do with crimes. And sadly, the Supreme Court created more problems than they solved.
Of course.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court would argue Congress has created the problem because Congress didn't deal with it. Congress can deal with it. They need to. They haven't dealt with it. Oklahoma obviously hasn't addressed it, and we haven't pushed our congressional delegation to deal with it.
Right. So, and we're in a very divided Congress. So getting Congress to actually fix it is probably not going to happen until you throw Pelosi out and AOC and that crazy bunch as well.
Right.
Or at least weaken them to where you can get something.
Good reason to vote Republican in Georgia.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
So.
From the article, thousands of previously convicted Oklahoma tribal members are now appealing their convictions and sentences for no other reason than that the federal sentencing guidelines are vastly less draconian than Oklahoma statutes allow. Gets into the concept of the vehicles. Many law enforcement officers are now said to be exempting motorists from speed law enforcement if they're driving a vehicle with tribal license plates, which gets me back to my arbitrary argument. It's like, look at this. If it's arbitrary enforcement, it is law. There is no law if it's arbitrarily enforced. There's zero law if it's arbitrarily enforced.
Yeah, correct. Tom, motorcycle cop can only write so many citations. There's a certain amount of time it takes to do it. So if you aren't stopping the tribal plate vehicles, you got more time to go after the rest of them. Okay. How is that not a 14th Amendment equal protection violation?
Absolutely.
So from the article, to finish it off, it makes the point from Sooner Politics 12/21 of this year. If we want to change the behavior of people whose actions harm themselves, let's create and fund the treatments that actually produce recovery. Sitting in a prison cell for years is not recovery program. It's exchanging one hell for another hell and sending the bill to taxpayers. For every locked up citizen, we punish the taxpayers $25,000 per year.
Yeah, no, Tom, that, there's a statement before that gives that better context. Is we had this legislature back in the 80s, 90s, especially when Keating came into power, and that we're going to get tough on crime. And if we just make the punishment bad enough, everybody will fix their own behavioral issues.
Yeah.
And as though that takes care of all mental health problems, all addiction problems, and everything else, or personal choice of what your vice is going to be, because we're okay with your liquor, we're just not okay with your weed.
So, and we're okay with your gluttony, but not with your homosexuality, or the other way around. I mean, it's just like, it's total arbitrary enforcement. It's what we get from humanistic ethics, is because it continues to change on a basis to where they can hold Freddie Mercury in my face as some sort of moral establishment. It's like, are you kidding me? How about God's law? Oh, you're such a fuddy duddy.
Well, but even in God's law, you're accountable to God on if you're victimizing somebody else.
Changes.
I know, but what I'm saying is, if you're victimizing somebody else, the state has a duty to protect the victim. But if you're only harming yourself, it's between you and God.
There is no victim.
And the bigger problem with the humanistic ethics is that it continues to change. And the value of the Judeo-Christian ethic is that it doesn't bow according to the whims of the secular behavior. It is a canon and a standard by which you judge it doesn't move. Otherwise, that's why progressive humanistic ethics is a continued downfall. It will always be the next step down. Well, Freddie Mercury, he didn't contract it, he didn't spread it, he contracted it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just, it is outside the realm. Anything else, guys, before we get out of here?
Looking forward to tomorrow night in Manford. Patriots, be there.
We hammered it.
Love to see you in Manford.
Yeah, I got to say, thanks again to Mark Thomas and Al Gerhart, our fine guests this evening. And thanks again to David Van and David Oldham. Standard procedure right here at 3D Politics. Don't forget, tomorrow night out there in Manford, 6 p.m. It's the hashtag Keep Christmas Rally, advocating for our constitutional liberties. It's out there at 101 Green Valley Drive, Manford, Oklahoma, 74044, next to the Manford Public Library. I'm going to send you, there you go. I'm going to send you guys out. Thank you, Oldham. Appreciate it. See you next time. There's Van. I just want to get rid of this thing here because
Merry Christmas, everyone.
You're going to see Van. Merry Christmas, Van. I appreciate you, but I'm going to take me out first. There's Van with that.
Don't leave me.
No, I love the coat. Next time I'll get a lit coat. Way to go, Van. All right. Merry Christmas, guys. We'll see you next time.